The storm tore across Viridia Prime like a living creature, hungry and relentless. Ice crystals sharp as broken glass rode the wind at speeds that could strip flesh from bone in seconds. Ethan Wade had seen 3 winters on this forsaken planet, and each one reminded him why the settlement program paid hazard bonuses that most people only dreamed about. The research station stood alone on a vast plain of glacial formations, its heat signature the only warm thing for 300 kilometers in any direction. He was checking the atmospheric processors when the proximity alarm chimed. Someone or something was moving outside the perimeter. Ethan's first thought was equipment malfunction. Nothing survived out there without proper shielding. But the thermal scanners didn't lie. A humanoid figure stumbled through the whiteout, moving with the desperate determination of someone who knew they were dying but refused to accept it. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed the emergency thermal suit from his locker, sealed himself inside, and hit the airlock release. The wind nearly knocked him down the moment he stepped outside. Visibility was maybe 2 meters on a good guess. He followed the tracker display on his wrist unit, pushing through drifts that reached his waist. She was face down when he found her. Crimson hair spread across the white snow like spilled wine. At first, Ethan thought it was human, but then he saw the ears, tall and pointed, tipped with black fur. A tail lay motionless beneath the tattered remains of a thermal cloak. Her clothing was designed for space travel, not planetary storms. Whatever had brought her here, she hadn't planned for this. Getting her back to the station took every bit of strength he had. She was taller than most human women, lean but solid with muscle. Her skin felt like ice through his gloves. By the time he dragged her through the airlock, his arms were shaking and his lungs burned from the recycled air. The station's medical bay was basic, but functional. Ethan stripped away her frozen outer layers, checking for frostbite and injury. Her physiology was similar enough to human that he could work with standard protocols. Elevated body temperature, accelerated metabolism, a cardiovascular system that seemed built for efficiency. He wrapped her in thermal blankets, started in 4 drip, and waited. It took 4 hours before her eyes opened. They were amber, bright as sunlight through honey, and they fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. She tried to sit up immediately, a soft growl building in her throat. Ethan raised his hands, keeping his distance. "Easy now. You're safe. You were dying out there." Her ears flattened against her head, a gesture he interpreted as confusion or fear. She spoke, but the words were liquid and musical, nothing his translator could parse. He reached slowly for the language processor on the medical cart, keeping his movements visible and non-threatening. "This will help us understand each other. May I?" She watched him for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. The device attached to her temple with a soft click, neural pathways syncing with her speech centers. When she spoke again, the words came through clear. "Where am I?" Her voice was lower than he expected, rich and careful. "Research Station Theta 7, Viridia Prime. You're in the Northern Territories. What happened to your ship?" Her expression shifted, pain flickering across her features. "Mechanical failure over the ice shelf. I ejected before impact, but the pod's navigation was damaged. I walked for 2 days trying to find shelter. 2 days in that storm. She should have been dead." Ethan felt a surge of respect for whatever survival instincts had kept her moving. "You're Keithany, right? I've read about your people, but never met one." Her ears perked slightly, surprise evident. "You know of us?" "The frontier tracks all kinds. We get information packets from the core worlds. Your species is known for long-distance exploration and unique cultural practices." She seemed to relax a fraction, her tail shifting beneath the blankets. "I am Silvara of the Southern Clans. I was traveling to Meridian Gates when the failure occurred." Ethan pulled up a star chart on his tablet. "That's 3 systems away. You were way off course. The storm must have pushed my pod further than I calculated." Her voice held frustration, but also something else. Acceptance, perhaps. "Thank you for saving my life. Human. Ethan. My name is Ethan Wade." Ethan Wade. She tested the name, her accent giving it a softer edge. "I am in your debt." "No debt. Just lucky I was monitoring the scanners." He gestured to the station around them. This isn't much, but you're welcome to stay until we can arrange transport. The supply ship won't be here for another 3 weeks, though. 3 weeks. Her ears drooped slightly. That is a long time to impose on your hospitality. You nearly died. I think I can manage having company for a few weeks. Beats talking to the computers. That earned him a small smile, the first break in her guarded expression. Very well. I accept your kindness, Ethan weighed. Over the next few days, Silvara regained her strength with remarkable speed. The Keithany healing factor was impressive, knitting tissue and restoring energy at a rate that would have taken humans twice as long. She moved through the station with careful curiosity, examining everything but touching nothing without permission. Ethan found himself watching her more than he probably should. The way she tilted her head when listening to him explained the research equipment, how her tail swayed gently when she was relaxed, still completely when she was focused, the elegant line of her neck when she bent over food synthesizer, trying to figure out human meal preferences. She caught him staring one evening while they ate dinner in the small common area. Her amber eyes held his, questioning but not hostile. Do I interest you, Ethan Wade? He felt heat rise to his face, a reaction he hadn't experienced in longer than he cared to admit. Sorry, didn't mean to be rude. Just not used to having anyone else around. I do not mind. Her voice was soft. You have kind eyes. That is rare in my experience. The comment caught him off guard. I've been alone out here for 2 years. Not much call for cruelty when you're the only person around. Perhaps that is why your kindness feels genuine. She set down her utensils, her expression becoming more serious. May I ask you something personal? Sure. Why do you live out here alone? This planet is beautiful in its way, but it is harsh and isolated. Most humans I have encountered prefer community. Ethan considered his answer carefully. I had a partner once, another researcher. We were going to build something out here together. She died in a reactor accident during the first winter. After that, I just kept working. Seemed easier than going back. I am sorry for your loss. There was genuine sympathy in her voice, but no pity. That distinction mattered to him. And you have been alone since? Mostly. I go to the main colony twice a year for supplies and equipment checks. But yeah, this is home now. Do you prefer it this way? He looked at her, really looked at her. The firelight from the heating unit cast warm shadows across her features, highlighting the constellation of freckles across her nose and cheeks. Her ears were angled toward him, patient and attentive. When had he last had a conversation this direct, this honest? I thought I did, he admitted. But having you here makes me realize what I've been missing. Her tail moved then, a slow sweep that he was beginning to understand meant contentment or pleasure. I am glad my presence is not a burden. Far from it. They held each other's gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Outside, the wind howled against the station's walls. Inside, the temperature seemed to rise several degrees all on its own. Silvara stood, stretching in a way that was entirely unconscious and entirely captivating. I should rest. Tomorrow I would like to help with your work. If you will teach me, I'd like that. She paused at the doorway to the sleeping quarters, looking back over her shoulder. Ethan Wade? Yeah. Thank you again. For everything. Anytime. When she disappeared into the other room, Ethan sat alone in the quiet station, listening to the storm outside and the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. For the first time in 2 years, he didn't feel like he was just surviving. He felt like he was living, and that terrified him almost as much as it excited him. The days that followed took on a rhythm that felt almost domestic. Ethan woke before dawn to check the station systems, and by the time he emerged from the equipment bay, Silvara would have breakfast prepared. She had learned the food synthesizer with surprising speed, experimenting with combinations that actually improved on his usual bland routine. Her additions of herbs and spices from her emergency supplies transformed simple protein rations into something that almost resembled real cooking. She wore one of the spare thermal shirts now, the fabric hanging loose on her frame, but somehow looking better on her than it ever had on him. Her own clothing was being repaired piece by piece, spread across the workbench in the common area where she stitched with small, precise movements. Ethan tried not to notice how the shirt slipped off one shoulder when she worked, revealing the smooth curve of her collarbone and the faint pattern of markings that traced down her neck. They fell into an easy pattern of conversation. Silvara told him about the Keithany homeworld, a planet of vast forests and crystalline rivers, where her people built their settlements in harmony with ancient trees. She described cities that grew rather than were constructed, living architecture that breathed and shifted with the seasons. Her clan was one of many, each with their own territories and traditions, but all connected by shared customs and beliefs. The bonding ritual was one such custom. Keithany did not choose partners lightly or quickly. They traveled, sometimes for years, meeting other species and cultures until they found someone whose soul resonated with theirs. When that connection formed, they would bring their chosen one home to be recognized by the clan. Only then was the bond considered sacred and complete. And if the clan does not approve, Ethan asked one evening as they worked together to recalibrate the atmospheric sensors. Silvara's ears flattened slightly. It is rare. The clan trusts the judgment of their members. But if there were true concern, a genuine incompatibility, they would speak it. The choice ultimately belongs to the individual, but the blessing of the clan brings peace and acceptance. How many times have you traveled looking for this bond? She was quiet for a moment, her hand stilling on the equipment. This is my fourth journey. I have met many good people, kind people, but none where the connection felt right. Each time I return home alone, I wonder if perhaps I was too particular, too cautious. My sisters bonded years ago. My mother worries I will wander forever. There was a vulnerability in her admission that made Ethan's chest tighten. He set down his tools and turned to face her fully. For what it's worth, I think being particular about who you share your life with isn't a bad thing. Better to wait for something real than settle for something convenient. Her amber eyes met his, and he saw the gratitude there, mixed with something deeper. You speak from experience. I do. My partner and I, we rushed into things. We were excited about the work, about the adventure, and we thought that was enough. Maybe it would have been given time. But I learned that companionship isn't just about shared goals. It's about understanding silence as much as conversation. Silvara moved closer, her tail brushing against his leg as she shifted position. You have grown wise from your solitude, Ethan Wade, or just older and more careful. She smiled, and the expression transformed her face from merely beautiful to radiant. Careful is not always bad. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Ethan could smell her scent now, something like cedar and winter berries, clean and sharp. Her ears were angled toward him, her posture open and relaxed. He wondered what would feel like to reach out and touch the soft fur, to trace the line of her jaw with his fingertips. Instead, he cleared his throat and returned to the sensors. We should finish this before the next storm cycle hits. If Silvara was disappointed by his retreat, she didn't show it. She simply nodded and resumed working, though her tail continued to sweep in that slow, contented pattern he was learning to recognize. The breakthrough in their relationship came 3 days later during a crisis that neither of them anticipated. Ethan was performing routine maintenance on the primary power core when one of the coolant lines ruptured. Superheated vapor filled the reactor chamber in seconds, and the automatic safeties failed to engage. Alarms screamed through the station as temperature readings spiked into the critical range. Silvara appeared in the doorway immediately, her expression sharp with concern. What is happening? Coolant failure. If I don't shut down the reactor manually, the whole station will become a radiation zone in less than 10 minutes. Ethan was already pulling on a heavy protective suit, his hands moving with practiced speed despite the adrenaline surging through his system. You cannot go in there alone. The heat will kill you before you reach the controls. I don't have a choice. The backup systems aren't responding. Then I will go with you. Before he could protest, she was grabbing the second suit, sealing herself inside with quick, efficient movements. Keithany can withstand higher temperatures than humans. I can reach the manual override while you handle the coolant valves. Ethan wanted to argue, to tell her it was too dangerous, but the reactor temperature was climbing, and they were out of time. He nodded sharply. Stay close to me. Follow my lead exactly. They entered the reactor chamber together, and the heat hit like a physical wall, even through protective suits. Visibility was nearly zero from the steam and vapor. Ethan's heads-up display showed the path to the coolant valves, and he moved by memory as much as sight, trusting his knowledge of the station's layout. Silvara stayed right behind him, her hand on his shoulder for guidance. When they reached the first junction, he pointed to the override panel mounted high on the wall, accessible only by climbing a narrow maintenance ladder. She didn't hesitate. Her natural agility served her well as she scaled the ladder with quick, confident movements. Ethan worked the valves, wrestling with mechanisms that were never meant to be operated under emergency conditions. Sweat poured down his face inside the helmet, and his muscles screamed with effort. He could hear Silvara calling out readings from the override panel, her voice steady despite the danger. The primary valve is stuck. I need more torque. Use the emergency release. Red handle on your left. There was a moment of silence, then a loud clang as she triggered the mechanism. The valve gave way with a groan of tortured metal, and Ethan felt the pressure begin to equalize. He moved to the second junction, working faster now, aware that every second counted. Silvara dropped down from the ladder and moved to help him, her strength adding the extra force needed to seal the damaged section. Together they worked in perfect synchronization, anticipating each other's movements, communicating with gestures and brief commands when words weren't enough. When the final valve locked into place and the alarm finally went silent, they both collapsed against the wall, breathing hard inside their suits. The temperature was already beginning to drop as the backup cooling systems engaged. We need to get out of here before the radiation levels spike, Ethan managed between gasps. They stumbled back through the chamber and into the decontamination area, stripping off the suits with shaking hands. The scanner showed elevated but manageable exposure levels. They would both need to monitor for symptoms, but they had made it in time. Ethan leaned against the wall, his legs suddenly unreliable. That was too close. But we succeeded. Silvara was beside him, her hand finding his. We make a good team. Ethan weighed. He looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. She was flushed from the heat, her hair damp with sweat, and she had never looked more beautiful. Without thinking, without the careful caution that usually governed his actions, he pulled her close and kissed her. For a heartbeat, she went still with surprise. Then she was kissing him back with an intensity that matched his own, her arms wrapping around his neck, her tail curling around his leg. She tasted like the tea she had been drinking earlier, sweet and complex, and the small sound she made against his mouth sent electricity racing down his spine. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard for entirely different reasons now, Silvara's eyes were bright, and her ears were angled forward with unmistakable interest. I have wanted to do that since the third day you were here, Ethan admitted, his voice rough. Only the third day? She smiled, teasing. I have wanted it since you carried me in from the storm. He laughed, the sound surprising him with its lightness. Then why didn't you say something? Her expression grew more serious, though the warmth remained. Because I needed to be certain. I have traveled so far, met so many, and been disappointed so often. I could not bear another false hope. But this this feels different. It does, doesn't it? Ethan cupped her face gently, his thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. I didn't think I could feel this way again. After losing someone, you build walls to protect yourself, and yet you let me in. Her hands covered his, her touch warm and grounding. Why? He considered the question seriously, wanting to give her the truth she deserved. Because you didn't ask me to tear down the walls. You just sat beside them until I was ready to open the gate myself. Tears shimmered in her amber eyes, and she kissed him again, softer this time, a promise rather than a claim. I choose you, Ethan Wade. If you will have me, I choose you. The weight of what she was offering settled over him. This wasn't just a relationship or a casual connection. By Keithany custom, choosing someone meant commitment, meant forever. It meant she would bring him home to face her clan, to be judged and accepted or rejected. It meant risking everything on the belief that what they had found together was real and worth fighting for. Ethan thought about the loneliness of the past 2 years, the careful numbness he had cultivated to protect himself from more pain. Then he thought about the woman in his arms, brave and beautiful, and looking at him like he was the answer to a question she'd been asking for years. The choice was easier than it should have been. I choose you too, Silvara. Whatever that means, wherever it leads. I'm in. Her smile could have lit the entire station. Then we have much to discuss. But perhaps first, we should make sure the reactor is truly stable, practical, and romantic. I like that combination. They spent the next hour running diagnostics and ensuring the emergency repairs would hold until proper replacement parts could be installed. But they worked side by side now, touching casually, exchanging glances that promised more than just partnership in maintenance duties. That night, after they had eaten and cleaned up and finally sat down to rest, Silvara curled against him on the common room couch. Her head rested on his shoulder, her tail draped across his lap, and Ethan marveled at how natural it felt to hold her. "Tell me about your world," she said softly, not the technical details or the research data. "Tell me what you love about being here." He stroked her hair absently, gathering his thoughts. The silence, mostly. On Earth, on any of the core worlds, there's constant noise. Here, when the storms quiet down, you can hear the ice singing. It makes this sound, like the planet is breathing, and it reminds you that you're part of something bigger than yourself. I understand that feeling. On my home world, we have the great forests where the trees are thousands of years old. When the wind moves through them, they sing in harmonics that our people have learned to interpret. It is said that the trees remember everything, and their songs tell the history of our world. I would like to hear that someday. She lifted her head to look at him, her expression both hopeful and uncertain. "Does that mean you would come with me? To my home world, to meet my clan?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Ethan knew what he was agreeing to. It meant leaving his research, at least temporarily. It meant stepping into a completely foreign culture, where he would be the outsider, the one being evaluated and judged. It meant trusting that what they had built in these few weeks was strong enough to withstand the scrutiny of an entire community. But when he looked into her amber eyes and saw the vulnerability there, the hope she was trying so hard to guard, the decision became clear. "Yes," he said simply. "When the supply ship arrives, we'll both leave. Together." Silvara's breath caught, and then she was kissing him again, deeply and thoroughly, pouring everything she felt into the contact. When they finally separated, her eyes were wet with tears. "You do not know what this means to me. How long I have searched, how many times I have hoped and been disappointed. You are a gift I did not expect." Ethan weighed. "The feeling is mutual." They stayed up late into the night, talking about the future in a way that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Silvara explained the journey to her homeworld, the protocols for introducing an outsider to clan, the ceremonies and traditions he would need to understand. Ethan listened carefully, asking questions, wanting to do this right for her sake. When they finally retired to their separate sleeping quarters, Ethan lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the path his life had taken. 2 years ago, he had been certain he would spend the rest of his days alone on this frozen planet, married to his work and his memories. Now he was planning to travel across the galaxy with an alien woman who had crashed into his life and turned everything upside down. The irony wasn't lost on him. Sometimes the things you weren't looking for were exactly what you needed to find. The supply ship arrived exactly on schedule, a battered cargo hauler called a Meridian Runner that serviced the outer research stations. Captain Torres was a weathered woman in her 60s who had been running supplies to Viridia Prime since the station was first established. She raised an eyebrow when Ethan informed her he would be leaving with Silvara, but she asked no questions beyond confirming his access codes and filing the necessary departure documentation. The journey to the Keithany homeworld would take 3 weeks through established jump gates and another 4 days of sublight travel once they reached the system. Ethan spent the transit time learning everything he could about Keithany culture from Silvara, absorbing information with the same focus he had once applied to his research. The clan structure was complex, but logical. Each family unit belonged to a larger clan, and each clan had representation in the regional councils that governed Keithany society. Decisions were made through consensus rather than majority rule, which meant discussions could take days or even weeks for important matters. Respect for elders was paramount, but so was the autonomy of individuals. It was a delicate balance that had apparently worked for thousands of years. The bonding ceremony itself was less formal than Ethan had anticipated. There were no vows or legal contracts, just a gathering of the clan where the couple would present themselves and speak their intentions. The clan would observe, ask questions of their concerns, and then offer their blessing or withhold it. Simple in concept, nerve-wracking in execution. What if they did not accept me? Ethan asked one evening as they shared meal in the ship's small galley. I am not Keithany. I do not share your customs or your history. What if they see me as unsuitable? Silvara reached across the table and took his hand, her thumb tracing circles on his palm. Then we will make them understand. My mother is traditional but fair. My father passed when I was young, but he always taught me to follow my heart. My brother Torin may be the most difficult. He is protective and suspicious of outsiders. Tell me about him. She smiled, though it was tinged with fondness and exasperation. Torin is 3 years older than me and believes it is his duty to guard me from every possible harm. When I decided to travel for my bonding journey, he argued against it for weeks. He thinks I am too trusting, too willing to see the best in people. And is he right? Sometimes. But that is not always a weakness. Her eyes met his steadily. I trust you, Ethan Wade. I have seen who you are when you think no one is watching. I have seen your kindness, your dedication, your courage. If Torin cannot see these things, then the problem lies with his vision, not with you. Her confidence in him was both reassuring and humbling. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. I will do everything I can to prove myself worthy of that trust. The ship dropped out the final jump gate on a clear morning, ship's time, through the observation port. Ethan got his first look at the Keithany homeworld. It hung in space like a jewel, predominantly green and blue with swirling white clouds. 3 small moons orbited in a gentle dance, and the system's yellow sun cast warm light across everything. It is beautiful, he said softly. Silvara stood beside him, her tail swaying with barely contained excitement. It is home. Come, we will be landing soon. The descent took them over vast forests that stretched to every horizon, broken only by rivers that gleamed silver in the sunlight. As they dropped lower, Ethan could see the settlement Silvara had described, structures that seemed to grow from the trees themselves, organic and deliberate. Landing platforms extended from the larger trees, and what appeared to be transportation networks connected different levels of the forest canopy. They touched down at a regional hub, and Silvara led him through a maze of platforms and walkways that swayed gently underfoot. Other Keithany moved around them, casting curious glances at Ethan but offering polite nods to Silvara. News of her return with an outsider had apparently preceded them. Her family's home was a graceful structure built into and around a massive tree that had to be centuries old. The entrance was marked by carved symbols that Silvara explained represented their clan lineage. She paused before entering, turning to face him with uncharacteristic nervousness. Whatever happens in there, know that I stand with you. My choice is made, and I do not regret it. Ethan cupped her face gently, brushing his lips against hers. Together, then, the interior was warm and inviting, filled with natural light from carefully placed openings in the walls. A woman who could only be Silvara's mother stood waiting, tall and regal with silver-streaked hair and the same amber eyes. Beside her stood a young male, powerfully built with dark fur-tipped ears and an expression of deep skepticism. Mother, Torin, Silvara said formally, I have returned, and I bring with me Ethan Wade of Earth. He is my chosen, and I ask the clan's blessing to bond. Elder Marana stepped forward, her gaze assessing as she studied Ethan. She circled him slowly, and he forced himself to stand still under the scrutiny, meeting her eyes when she came back around to face him. You are human. Her voice was melodious but carried authority. My daughter has traveled to 4 worlds seeking a bond, and she returned to a human from a frozen research station. Explain to me why you are worthy of her. The question was direct, even blunt, but Ethan respected the honesty. He thought carefully before answering, knowing that his next words would shape everything that followed. I cannot claim to be worthy, Elder Marana. Silvara is extraordinary in ways I am still discovering. What I can offer is the truth of who I am and what I feel. I was alone for a long time, by choice, because I believed it was safer to keep distance between myself and others. Your daughter did not try to force her way into my life. She simply existed beside me until I remembered what it meant to be human, to connect, to hope. She saved me in ways that have nothing to do with the blizzard I found her in. If you ask me why I am worthy, I cannot answer. But if you ask me why I choose her, I can speak for hours. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Elder Marana's expression softened fractionally. You speak, well, human, but words are easy. Torin, what say you? The brother stepped forward, his posture aggressive. I say we know nothing of this man, except that he lives alone on a dead world. How do we know he will not isolate my sister from her people? How do we know his intentions are pure and not simply convenient loneliness? Torin, Silvara began, but Ethan held up a hand gently. Your concerns are valid. He addressed Torin directly, keeping his voice calm and respectful. You love your sister and want to protect her. I understand that, because I feel the same way. As for my intentions, I can only offer my actions as proof. I did not seek Silvara out. Fate or chance brought her to my door during a storm. I could have provided minimal aid and sent her on her way when the weather cleared. Instead, I offered what I had, learned who she was, and discovered that somehow, against all logic, we fit together. If you doubt me, ask her. Ask her if I have ever tried to control her choices or limit her freedom. Ask her if I have treated her as anything less than an equal partner. Torin's eyes narrowed, but he turned to his sister. Well, Silvara, has he spoken truth? She stepped forward, her voice ringing with conviction. More than truth. Ethan has shown me respect that many of my own kind did not. He has listened when I spoke, valued my skills, and trusted me with decisions that affected his life. When we faced danger together, he did not try to shield me but fought beside me as an equal. This is not convenience or loneliness. This is recognition of something rare and worth protecting. Elder Marana raised her hand for silence. I would speak with Ethan alone. Silvara, Torin, please wait outside. Silvara looked like she wanted to protest, but she bowed her head in respect and withdrew. Torin followed reluctantly, casting one last suspicious glance at Ethan before the door closed. The elder gestured to a seat by the window. Sit, human. Let us talk properly. Ethan sat, and Marana sailed across from him, her tail curling elegantly around the chair. Tell me about your lost partner, the one who died on that frozen world. The question caught him off guard, but he recognized the wisdom in it. You want to know if I see Silvara as a replacement. I want to understand your heart. A person who has loved and lost carries scars. Those scars can heal, or they can poison new growth. Ethan took a breath, thinking about how to explain. Her name was Rachel. We were colleagues first, then friends, then partners. When she died, I blamed myself for not being able to save her. I closed myself off because it seemed easier than risking that pain again. What I did not realize was that I was not honoring her memory by staying frozen. I was just afraid. And now I understand that Rachel would have hated what I became. She believed in living fully, in taking risks for things that mattered. Silvara did not make me forget Rachel. She reminded me of why Rachel's passion for life was something to celebrate, not fear. I will always carry the memory of what I lost. But Silvara is not a substitute. She is something entirely new, and I love her for exactly who she is. Elder Marana studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. My daughter has always seen deeper than most. She finds value where others see only surface. I worried that this quality would lead her to someone who would take advantage of her generous heart, but I see now that she has found someone who understands a gift he has been given. You have my blessing. Ethan Wade of Earth. Relief flooded through him, though he tried to keep his expression composed. Thank you, Elder. Do not thank me yet. You must still convince Torin, and he will not be easily swayed. He has watched his sister return disappointed 3 times before. He will test you. I welcome the challenge. If it proves to Torin that I am serious, then it is necessary. The door opened, and Silvara and Torin entered. Silvara's eyes went immediately to Ethan, searching for signs of how the conversation had gone. He smiled at her, and her shoulders relaxed visibly. Mother? Torin asked, "What is your judgment?" "I find no deception in this human. His heart is true, and his commitment to Silvara is genuine. I give my blessing to this bond." Torin's jaw tightened, but he bowed his head respectfully. "If you have decided, then I will not argue. But I ask for the right to test him in the traditional way." Silvara stiffened. "Torin, that is not necessary. It is my right as her brother. If this human claims to be her equal, let him prove it." Ethan stood, facing Torin directly. "What does this test involve?" "Combat, not to harm, but to measure. Strength, skill, and determination. We fight until one yields or until blood is drawn. It is an old tradition, rarely used now, but still recognized